TGIF, it's Friday. It's December 12th, 2025. Your Day with the Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, the wind gradients are going to ease. So the Arctic air coming in out of Canada, going into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, as it pulls east, will basically make the temperature gradient less, which will make the pressure gradient less, which will make the winds better. Got to warn you, though, they're not going to go away. It's not like we're going calm. It's just that they're not going to be nearly as intense. The pattern readjustment over Canada and the higher latitudes taking place next week with the polar vortex realigning itself. That combined with that blocking pattern, it's still there, boy, and it's robust over the Aleutians and over the Bering Strait. That combined with the readjustment of the polar vortex pattern is going to lead to extremely low model skill scores past 5 days. Really, honestly, if you're looking at weather forecasts past 7 days, just take it with a grain of salt because the model scores are going to be low. There's going to be a lot of variations. We're just going to have to take it one day at a time when we take a look at Christmas week. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. The beautiful sunset yesterday captured by many folks from Livermore, Colorado to Colorado Springs to Longmont along the Front Range. Then awesome lenticular clouds going up Highway 130 near Woods Landing. And that shot also, those lenticular clouds going down the summit between Laramie and Cheyenne. And then here's another angle really from the same cloud formation. That was looking east to west. This one's looking west to east of those lenticulars over near the Snowy Range yesterday. And down into the San Luis Valley, beautiful shot there. Another shot along the Front Range. And those lenticular clouds with the color, those same lenticular clouds that shot there from Laramie. And then some lenticulars up along the Bighorns ahead of that Arctic push. Now, this is not an old stock photo. Yes, this is actually a photo of a flag in Wyoming yesterday. What do you notice? Yes, it's not straight out. It's not shredded and ripped in pieces. There was actually a spot in Wyoming here over the last couple of days where there really hasn't been much wind, and that is Lander. Now, you might say, how could that happen when it's just been a vortex everywhere else? Well, those Wind River Mountains are a heck of a wind shadow. In fact, you got a big wind shadow right here. That 2 is where Lander is. You also have a wind shadow in the Sublette County area, the Bighorn Basin here. The major mountain ranges, especially when the wind direction is right, can give you shelter from the wind. While it's blowing along the I-80 corridor here right there, you've got light winds in the Wind River Basin. So, depends on where you live sometimes. The satellite photo is a little bit different this morning. We're seeing still that Pacific flow, but notice it's getting shunted north, so that will give relief from the flooding here in Washington State as there's a bit of a bulge of the jet stream going more north, which is directing the Arctic air this way, and then bringing high pressure to the western United States. And that shows up very well there in the water vapor. So this map looks familiar. We've been showing it all week. The Alberta Clipper Parade continues into the northern plains and southern Canada in the Great Lakes. High pressure causing severe clear along the west coast. And on Sunday, so we're going to start to see things shifting. So on Sunday, the jet stream moves more north and east. You've got that low there into the Great Lakes and the northeastern United States. That'll cause a lot of winter weather there this weekend. So it'll be very cold over the nation's east and Midwest with this high pressure bulging into the Rockies. And that's going to take the jet stream more north and east. Hence, the relaxing of the gradient and the lighter winds. Here's your blocking pattern out here in the Pacific. Just an incredibly strong block. So we're going to get this low right here that's going to want to produce a lot of weather into Alaska, into British Columbia. But the pattern between these highs here will kind of keep this guy bottled up through the weekend and into the start of next week. There will likely, however, be a little wave. This guy right here is likely going to move through around Wednesday or Thursday of next week, and that may be a weather maker. I hate to say it, but we may have another high wind event next week. We'll have to watch that. Just watching the Arctic air and the contrast between divides is quite remarkable. So this will be around noon today. you can see the purple. All the Arctic air spilling out of Canada into Montana, extreme northeastern Wyoming getting clipped, and then into the Dakotas and the Midwest. And then you can see all the warmth in the western United States along and west of the divide. You might notice the green there in central California. Well, that high pressure ridge along the west coast is trapping cool air in California's central valleys. So that's why you see that island of cool there. So if we progress through the weekend, this is today, this is Saturday, and this is Sunday, you can see the Arctic air making its move south and east into the nation's midsection. There will be record temperatures this weekend in those areas where you see the purple. Notice there's a gap, okay? So this release of Arctic air out of Canada is going through its life cycle. These patterns go through cycles. So once the release of the coldest of the cold takes place, you start another cycle. You kind of do a Control-Alt-Delete on the weather pattern. So that Arctic air pushes away, but you're going to see temperatures like this in the upper Midwest, parts of the Northwest Corn Belt by Sunday morning. That doesn't include wind chills. And along the river here, you're going to see temperatures that are probably going to be colder than what it's showing there. And by Monday, you can see it's still cold in the east, warming up in the west, and the warmer air getting a Chinook for Alberta and British Columbia, and Chinooks in the Rockies, making things very, very mild as we're getting that readjustment. Precipitation. So through Sunday, the moisture's right along the Arctic boundary, and that's where the snow is going to be between now and Sunday as well. But look at all the white. Look at all of this nothing right here, because everything's being directed to the north, and that blocking pattern in the Pacific is going to be dominating. So if we look at where we are today, the polar vortex is a bit broken up into three different pieces, but look what happens in just a few days. We get that consolidation. So we get it reforming northwest of Hudson Bay. So this is the next cycle. So we just have gone through a cycle. The next cycle is taking place and forming. So this is going to consolidate the cold on this side of the globe again. And then we have this east-west axis, which makes a very flat west-to-east jet stream flow across the lower 48. However, what's going to be a bit of a problem, this is where we have the modeling concerns, is that you get these waves around the bigger trough here in the Gulf of Alaska. And these little waves will come in to the western United States. Now, sometimes they'll amplify and become stronger, or they'll race on through and cause mountain snow and a lot of wind on the plains. And that's something towards that Wednesday, Thursday time frame we'll need to keep an eye on. And there you go. So this is Wednesday night and Thursday. This wave right here breaks off and races through. And so this is going to be a pattern that we have to watch. This could end up becoming a storm in the Great Lakes, and especially could end up being a nor'easter later on next week. But we're back to spokes on the wheel around the polar vortex. Okay, we've seen that before. So you start to get these waves rotating around the polar vortex. The blocking pattern out in the Pacific will kind of be the director on, depending on where the block is and how it goes through its changes, its evolvements over time, will dictate where these waves want to go. Are they going to stay along the border, or are some going to want to come down further west into the Great Basin? And that's something that's why we're putting a lot of question marks on your 7-day forecast across the country, because this pattern, the polar vortex realigning, the spokes on the wheel, and the wave pattern, the number of waves increasing across the flow, leads to that low skill level in the models. So we're just going to have to peek into next week. We'll have to get through that windy period towards the middle of next week, and probably a shot of mountain snow to see what happens Christmas week. And we'll all be watching out in the Bering Sea and over the Aleutians. This is by next Saturday. By next Saturday, that block is still there and it's robust. This is on the GFS model. There it is. And then if we look at the European model, same thing, same location, but it's a little bit different. The message here is this block is not going anywhere anytime soon. But what happens with the polar vortex over Canada and how those spokes on the wheel form will dictate what happens as we look out 10 to 14 days from now. Don't forget our regional travel forecast. You'll find it on our YouTube channel. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday.